A single liter of JP-5 fuel, the blood that runs through the veins of an F/A-18 Super Hornet fighter jet, costs approximately $4 today. A single Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, the steel heart of an American carrier strike group, consumes over 2 million liters of this fuel per day just to keep its air operations at combat pace. We're talking about $8 million daily, more than 40 million Brazilian reals, burned just to keep the angels of death in the air. Now multiply this by the escort of destroyers, cruisers, and submarines, each with its insatiable thirst for energy, ammunition, and maintenance. The cost to project a floating city of military power, thousands of kilometers from home, easily surpasses the $1 billion mark per week. It's a figure that the human brain can barely process, a mountain of money that could rebuild an entire city. Why would a nation spend this fortune to position this lethal force a few kilometers from the coast of a failed country? The answer isn't philanthropy. The answer lies in the engineering of annihilation. And the target of this engineering, the epicenter of an invisible war that has already begun, is about to feel the impact of every cent of this investment. What does this mathematics of force have to do with Brazil? Everything. Because the collapse this fleet will precipitate does not end in Caracas. It begins there, and the shockwave is designed to sweep across the continent, striking the heart of the system that declared war on our sovereignty. The threat looming over the Caribbean is not just about a dictator. Nicolas Maduro is a disposable pawn, a grotesque symptom of the real disease. The intimidating presence of the United States Fourth Fleet, reactivated by Donald Trump with the specific purpose of patrolling our backyard, is the first move in a continental disinfection operation. The real target, the brain behind the puppet of Miraflores, is the transnational criminal organization known as the Sao Paulo Forum. It is this structure that, for decades, has operated in the shadows, weaving a web of corruption, drug trafficking, and ideological subversion with a single objective: to transform Latin America into a captive bloc, a docile vassal at the service of its global masters. And the master who pays the bill today, who finances the degeneration, and who profits most from our weakness, has a name and address: the Chinese Communist Party. Beijing saw in the Forum the perfect tool, its proxy army, to conduct a hybrid war against American influence, and most importantly, to plunder our strategic resources. Venezuela, under the command of the Forum, has become its outpost, a private gas pump, and a base of operations to spread chaos. Every neighborhood sinking in Maceo due to predatory salt extraction, every gram of niobium smuggled out of Brazil, every port we give away in suspicious concessions, all connects to this grand strategy. The fall of Maduro is not, therefore, an isolated act. It's the severing of the main financial and logistical artery that feeds the serpent. It's the beginning of dismantling the enemy's infrastructure in our hemisphere. A brute force action to ensure that the sovereignty of Brazil and the Americas is not auctioned off in Beijing. What is at stake is whether the future of our children will be decided by US or by bureaucrats of a totalitarian regime on the other side of the world. To understand the scale of the enemy operation, we need to look at the maps and follow the money. The engineering of evil is methodical and frighteningly efficient. China, under the guise of the Belt and Road Initiative, is not building bridges. It is forging chains. Venezuela's debt with China exceeds the $60 billion mark. An unpayable debt which was not designed to be paid with money but with oil, gold, and above all, geopolitical submission. Naval intelligence analyses show a constant flow of Venezuelan tankers performing ship-to-ship transfers in international waters to Chinese vessels, a maneuver to circumvent sanctions and ensure the flow of resources that funds Beijing's war machine never stops. In return, China sends surveillance technology, repression equipment, and military advisors who teach the Bolivarian National Guard to crush its own people. But the math goes further. The Sao Paulo Forum acts as the regional manager of this colonization. Reports from the DEA and the American Treasury detail how the drug trafficking routes, controlled by the Cartel de los Soles, a cartel of generals from Maduro's regime, finance political operations throughout South America. The dirty money from cocaine is laundered through shell companies and used to finance campaigns, social movements, and black blocs that serve to destabilize governments not aligned with the forum's agenda. It's a perfect symbiosis. The regime provides the logistics for crime. Crime generates slush funds for politics, and politics delivers the country to China. The plan for Brazil is identical. Control strategic sectors like energy, agribusiness, and mining, using the same combination of political corruption and economic pressure. The acquisition of vast stretches of land, control of port terminals, and influence over our energy matrix are not investments. They are siege movements. It's a strategy of slow and silent strangulation. They are building a logistical and economic fortress within our borders to subjugate us without firing a single shot. It's the 21st century war, waged with containers and corruption. And we are the final prize. Faced with such a complex siege strategy, a conventional response would be useless. And this is where the genius of Donald Trump's doctrine comes in, a counteroffensive that attacks the enemy on all fronts, turning their greatest strengths into their worst weaknesses. The masterstroke wasn't sending the Marines to Caracas, but declaring total war on the financial structure that supports the House of Cards. The first pillar of this counteroffensive is economic suffocation. The American Treasury acted as the Pentagon's financial arm. It mapped and sanctioned hundreds of individuals and companies linked to Maduro's regime and the Sao Paulo Forum. Every frozen bank account, every blocked gold transaction, every oil tanker on the blacklist is a missile. A Tomahawk missile fired at the enemy's vault. They cut off the flow of dollars that allowed corrupt generals to maintain the loyalty of their troops. Without money to pay the soldiers, the power of the bayonet evaporates. The second pillar is legal and diplomatic warfare. By recognizing a legitimate opposition government and supporting figures like Maria Corina Machado, the United States isolated the regime, transforming Maduro from president to head of a criminal organization. The awarding of the Nobel Peace Prize to Machado was no accident. It was a heavy-caliber diplomatic weapon, giving her the international protection needed to challenge tyranny from within. And she knew whom to thank, dedicating the honor to Trump, the only global leader who moved real pieces on the board. The third pillar, and the most visible, is calculated military intimidation. The constant presence of the Fourth Fleet and reconnaissance aircraft flyovers. Joint military exercises with allied nations like Colombia and Brazil send an unequivocal message. We know where you are, we know what you're doing, and we have the capability to turn your world into hell in less than 48 hours. This is not a threat of invasion. It's a demonstration of capability. It's a way of telling the Venezuelan generals, your tyrant has nowhere to run. Abandon the sinking ship. Get out while you still can, or go down with him. This is precisely Trump's legacy. Understanding that true strength lies not just in using military power, but in integrating economic, diplomatic, and military power into a symphony of relentless pressure. Breaks the enemies will even before the first shot needs to be fired. The consequences of this multidimensional counteroffensive are already reverberating through the corridors of enemy power, generating a wave of panic, humiliation, and paranoia that spreads like a virus. In Caracas, despair is no longer just palpable. It has become the atmosphere everyone breathes in the Miraflores palace. Maduro, visibly swollen and with the eyes of someone who hasn't slept in days, orders military exercises that are the purest expression of the theater of the absurd. Soviet-made T-72 tanks, spewing black smoke and with screeching tracks, parade through empty avenues, not to intimidate an external enemy, but as a desperate attempt to intimidate their own circle of power. It's a performance for their own cameras, a pathetic show of force for the generals, whom he knows will betray him at the first opportunity. Every troop movement is not a strategic maneuver, but a test of loyalty. Intelligence sources on the ground, corroborated by signal interceptions, paint a picture of absolute internal collapse. Desertions are no longer a trickle, but a hemorrhage. Entire battalions positioned at the border with Colombia are operating with less than 40% of their personnel. The rank-and-file soldiers, receiving salaries that don't buy a kilo of flour, simply abandon their posts overnight, melting into the landscape to become refugees. But the real panic is in the upper echelons. High-ranking officers, whose families live luxurious lives in Miami and Madrid, are racing against time, using clandestine channels and intermediaries to negotiate their surrender with American contacts. They offer information, the location of missile depots, the passwords to drug trafficking accounts, all in exchange for a safe place in the new regime, which they know is coming. The Cartel de los Soles, the once monolithic organization of drug trafficking generals that was the financial backbone of the regime, is in civil war. With money, laundering routes sanctioned and overseas assets frozen, the cash flow has dried up. Loyalty bought with drug trafficking dollars has evaporated. Now, our rival factions are killing each other in disputes over clandestine airstrips and control of the few shipments still going out. Maduro's humiliation at the UN was merely the public ceremony of his political funeral. The true decomposition of his power is happening now in barracks and secret meeting rooms, where the only ideology left is individual survival. But the shockwave doesn't stop at the Venezuelan border. In Havana, the panic smells like diesel and sounds like the silence of turned-off generators. The Castro regime, a parasite that has lived off the blood of its hosts for over 60 years, first the Soviet Union and then Venezuela, sees its main energy source being cut off in real time. Blackouts, which were already routine, now last for days. The island prison is plunging back into the darkness of a new special period, but this time without the hope of a new patron on the horizon. The collapse of Venezuela is not just an economic problem for Cuba, it's an existential security crisis. Without Maduro's oil, the regime can't keep its repression apparatus running, can't move its troops, can't even keep the lights on in G2's torture centers. The fall of Caracas inevitably precipitates the fall of Havana. However, the epicenter of the geopolitical earthquake is in Beijing. There, the panic is not expressed in screams but in an icy silence within the halls of the Zongnanhai complex. For the Chinese Communist Party, the scenario is a strategic and financial disaster of catastrophic proportions. The more than $60 billion they poured into Venezuela wasn't a loan. It was an upfront payment for the deed to a country. They bought oil fields, gold and coltan mines, port terminals, and most importantly, a base for military and intelligence operations less than 2,000 kilometers from Florida. It was supposed to be their private and unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Americas. Now they watch helplessly as this $60 billion asset turns to dust. Analysts from the Ministry of State Security, who ensured the stability of Maduro's regime, are being purged. Diplomats who crafted the onerous deals are being investigated for intelligence failures. Beijing's humiliation is monumental because it exposes the fundamental flaw in their global power strategy. They, who project themselves as masters of hybrid warfare and strategic patience, were outmaneuvered, outflanked, and neutralized in their own game by a smarter, more agile, and more relentless American power doctrine. They bet the credibility of their global expansion on a lame horse, and now the whole world watches as the horse is put down. And for the Sao Paulo Forum, the brains behind the regional destabilization operation, the fall of its main center for command control and finances is a blow to the very backbone. The entire structure is in paralysis. The money that funded institutes, unions, social movements, and political campaigns across the continent, channeled and laundered through PDVSA, simply stopped coming. Despair spreads like fire among its members, who now know that the protective shield of a friendly regime has been broken. Justice, once a distant threat, is now knocking at the door. The question circulating in every secret meeting, from Brasilia to Buenos Aires, is no longer how do we move forward, but who among us will be the next to fall. The invisible battle for the soul and sovereignty of the Americas has just been brutally exposed to daylight. What you witnessed in this dossier was not just the chronicle of the fall of an operetta dictator. It was the revelation of a complex and cold intelligence war, of surgical economic power and relentless military strategy designed with a single purpose: to uproot the metastatic cancer of the Sao Paulo Forum and cut off the tentacles of its globalist sponsors in Beijing. The spectacular force and precision of the American counteroffensive, a symphony of power orchestrated under Trump's doctrine, is conclusive proof that tyranny and treachery can indeed build empires on the sand of corruption and fear. But these empires, always and inevitably, collapse before the force of determination, courage, and real power. The enemy, who for years operated with the arrogance of someone who considers themselves untouchable in the shadows of diplomacy and subversion, is now exposed, weakened, humiliated, and hunted. Their panic is the fuel for our determination. Victory, therefore, is not just on the horizon. It is being forged now, at this very moment, piece by piece, with each sanction applied, each bank account frozen, each fleet movement that restricts the opponent's maneuvering space. But understand once and for all, this decisive war for our future is not fought only with aircraft carriers, spy satellites, and special forces operators. The most critical battlefront, the trench where Brazil's destiny will be decided, is here, now on this digital platform. The enemy, defeated in the field of brute force, stakes its survival on its last weapon: the information war. Their propaganda machine works 24 hours a day to fabricate narratives, to invert the truth, to call tyranny democracy and liberation imperialism. They thrive on confusion, apathy, and above all, the ignorance of the people. Our sacred duty as patriots, as sentinels of the nation, is to destroy this ignorance. The most powerful weapon in this phase of the conflict is not a missile, it is truth packaged for impact. Each of you watching this channel is not a mere spectator. You are a soldier on the front line of this war. Sharing this dossier is not a trivial act, it's a counterintelligence operation. Sending this video to every contact, to every family group, to every social network, is arming one more Brazilian with the knowledge of what's truly at stake. Each like is an advance, each subscription is the strengthening of our trench. Win the information war. Destroy the enemy's narrative. Warn one more patriot. The time is now.